So if you still have your paper, we are on the tail end of this thing. And does anybody need a copy of the last part of, it's called 12C. It starts with a lot of Bible verses, their addresses, but we are on page 4. Anybody need a copy? So I appreciate your discussion, I appreciate your input, and we don't need any more copies. We have enough.
We need one.
You may give Collins that one.
Okay.
Because I still have another one. So you don't have to make any copies. Thank you, Patty. Did I miss anybody else with that? And John, thanks for videoing this for us. So we are talking about monasticism, and we're at the heart here of what the monastic contributions were. And what are you looking for?
Page 4.
Here's page 4. Did you just need page 4?
Yeah.
That looks different than my page 4.
This is page 2 and 3.
This is where we are. You got this one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's it. This is the one.
That's the one you need.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, monastic contribution. John, what's the first one that we talked about?
Preservation and knowledge.
That's what they were. This is a little review. So much of the great works, the works of the what we call the apostolic fathers and so on, that was protected in the monastery. What was another one, Patty?
Education.
That's right, and we talked about that last week, and that was teaching, and you have, the songs that we were singing, and I was not expecting to sing Be Thou My Vision, but Mary was here last week, and she wanted to sing that song, and I cast it in front of the elders, and it didn't have any problems with that. I was trying to figure out why it was not in our song. Did anybody else research that? All I can find out is that it is too much concentrated on the individual rather than the congregation. But then, I know we sing, I know whom I have believed. That is an individual one too. So anyway, those are the things that we run into. The new thing that we haven't talked about is social services. When we talk about social services, the monasteries really were the early hospitals. They took care of sick people. It's a very vital role. Here's a picture that somebody painted of the monastery being a place where they could have care. They also provided, it was sort of like an inn, like a motel, a place where travelers could stay and have a place to sleep, and they could eat on their journey. Those two things is what the hospital was, what the monasteries provided, and I find that quite interesting. And so we have here also now, what is this one, Richard?
The economic impact?
Yes. What economic impact do you think the monastery would have, the monks? How would they contribute to the economy? Well, here's a clue. You recognize this guy? I don't expect you to. His name is Gregor Mendel. Do you remember what he did? Josie, do you remember? He is the father of heredity, is what he's called. Would you read this for us, the first three major lines there, Cole?
Austrian monk in the 1800s.
And you may read the next sentence.
Experimented with pea plants to contribute to our understanding of genetics. Genetics equals study of heredity. Heredity equals passing of trace to offspring.
He is the one that God revealed the fundamental laws of heredity, that there is genes that are passed from one generation to the next. And he did his experiments there with peas, on the seeds, on the flower, on the pod, and on the stems. And he was one of the very first people that we know of that could do some crossbreeding and stuff like that. And he was laughed at first, but later on, as heredity was studied more and more, scientists went back to Mendel, and he is honored as doing groundbreaking research on genetics. And so this was a great economic impact, because as he's doing his crossbreeding and so on, he's developing pea plants, which are producing more peas and so on and so forth. And today, if you're into agriculture, you know that this type of engineering, working with genetics, is very, very powerful. And so he was a monk. You have all of this agriculture going on they were raising crops, they're selling these things in the marketplaces, and so they help the economy a lot. Any comment, question? I just have some pictures now of monasteries. I just would like to ask you, how do you think these monasteries were built?
Hand by hand, by the monks.
That's what I thought. And they helped. But could the monks buy this stuff? The materials? Could they cut the stones? Could they transport these things? Could they cut the wood and the lumber that's up in the roofs of these things? The answer to that is no. There were a lot of wealthy people. There were craftspeople. There were laborers and so on. And so these monasteries would be built by the community, and it was a place that the monks would live and enjoy. So these are old. They've been there for centuries. I just find them, they built them on top of cliffs. I'm just really fascinated with this one. Isn't that beautiful? How they carved those stones. Just amazing. All religions have their monasteries. These are Buddhist monasteries. Can you imagine building that up there? Hearing all that stuff? Closer pictures. Here's another one, Nepal. Here's also another one. Anyway, that's it. Time for you to talk. What is your view of monasticism? And I'm going to let you zero in on what advantages do you see in a monastic life?
You're not tempted to do the worldly things.
How many of you would agree with that? That's one of the reasons that they moved in. So that I'm much more protected from the world. You don't have those distractions. Anything else?
Seems less stressful.
Seems less stressful. How many of you agree? Wouldn't you just like to leave this class and go to your bedroom after this? And then get up at 1:30 for prayer? Do you think it was less stressful? Patty says no. Why not, Patty?
Because you have rules out in the world, but you have just as many rules inside the monastery.
Do you think it was very structured, like?
I don't know. As the parent of Caleb, I think it looks way less stressful.
I love your infant. Anybody else? Well, here we go. First one. Mariah?
In one's spiritual and personal development.
Okay. What are the advantages in your spiritual and personal development? And you already have stated this first one. Kelly?
Freedom from distraction.
Yeah. You don't have all of these other things coming into your eyes, into your ears. There is not that distraction. The monastery, it minimized the things of the world. And as you were talking a bit ago, you know, we all have careers that we are engaged in. Well, you don't have a career that you have to devote your time to. You don't have family obligations because you were living there as a single individual. Did you have much material possession? You did. You had very little that was yours. And so those distractions, as I think you mentioned right off of the bat, would be that you had freedom from those distractions. Another thing that would be true, and Kendon, this is yours.
Intensive spiritual training.
What do you think that means, young man?
It means that you are learning about God probably 100 times more than we are in our schools today.
Yeah, the whole environment of the monastery was designed to study the Word. It was there. You're going to learn to be compassionate. You're going to have peace. You had all of these worship services, 8 times of prayer, these periods of study, all of these things. It was intensive. The next one, Collins.
Ethical living.
Ethical means that you live a godly life. Do you think the monastery would promote a godly life, Collins? It'd be like being in church all day, right? And here you are, you're with brothers, or if you're a nun, you're with sisters. And so you are having your studies, you're cultivating a mind that's pure, peaceful, and content. And here is another one, Tim.
Finding a deeper purpose for living.
Yeah, we use those kinds of words. And so what you have here, instead of being distracted by getting all of my work done for my career, what you have is that you are having these, your life is more concentrated on taking care of other people, meeting other people's needs. You're going and being concerned for the welfare of others. That's what it is. And so those are advantages. Would you agree with that? All right. Now, the next thing we have to talk about is the community and support. Here is another advantage. And the first one would be Dan.
The built-in support system.
All right. So where would that support come from?
So through the Catholic Church.
Correct. And plus, all of your other people you are living with, it'd be like you're on a college campus. Everybody's there to study, hopefully. But here you have everybody here. They have the same spiritual goals. They're going to encourage you. They're going to support you. You're going to have, that's called built-in support. You don't have to look for it. You're living with it. You're there. If you're struggling with something, you've got that support. And so that's another advantage. Josie, this one.
Guidance and experience teachers.
All right. And so the monastery had teachers. They had educated people. The monks were there to learn from their teachers. And so you would have that great advantage that the people teaching you have insight, they have understanding in the things of God. And we have this one, Corey.
Shared resources.
All right. So what resources are in the seminary, are in the monastery that you can share? You don't have to go out and look for them. They are there. Because you're all together.
Books.
Correct. There'd be food. You don't have to worry about that. The food would be there. You've got your gardens. You've got your cows to milk and stuff. Clothing. You all wear these robes. You didn't, look at the latest fashions. And of course, you had shelter. You were not involved in trying to find a place to live. So you're fully devoting yourself to spiritual training without having to provide for all of these things. Any comment you want to make? And then there is a benefit for the wider world. How does a monastery benefit the world? We are just going to go on with the class. The first one, David.
Moral and spiritual example.
That's correct. The monk, when he got out on the street, or he was doing his work, their simple lifestyle, their compassionate lifestyle, set an example for the world. And I don't know, have you ever seen a monk? Not that you know of, right? In Korea, there are a lot of Buddhist monks, and they're wearing these bright orange robes. You can see them coming down the street. My attitude was, I'm going to watch you to see how you behave, how you act. What is it? They're all very humble. They're all, they'll smile at you and stuff like that. There are a moral and a spiritual example. That is what they are to the broader society.
Now, when I was in New Orleans, there was a lot of Buddhist monks out on the streets there.
In New Orleans.
Yeah.
Wow.
I don't know, it seemed like most of them didn't know English very well, but they were going around giving out free beads and then expecting a donation.
Okay. Did you all hear what John said? Giving out free beads, and then you were to give them some money. if I went to a monastery, I think, if you went to a monastery, I think you'd be looking at these men, and you're going to be expecting that they're going to set a spiritual example for it. Becky B.
Preservation of teachings and culture.
Yes, we've spoken about that before, but the world benefits a lot from how the monastery preserved culture, preserved teachings that would have been destroyed when you have the barbarians sacking Rome and so on and so forth. They were the place where God preserved. They preserved ancient writings, they preserved art. There, in a sense, they preserved some traditions as well. And then we have this one, Ryan.
Offer a place of refuge.
That's right. And as we said before, in travelers, they needed a place to stay. If you were ill, there was a place of refuge. People who wanted to get away from the chaos of life. It was a place that opens to you and you are there. That is one of the benefits. Those are, we believe, our advantages. Did we miss any in your mind? Now we're going to go disadvantages. What disadvantage do you see in the monastic life?
You're separated from the world.
And what's the problem with that?
Well, if you're God's workmanship and He has His calling for you to reach the world, it's harder to do when you're not in contact with them.
You are correct. And so we're going to just call it personal and social restrictions on you. And Patty, this first one.
Limited independence.
You go there and you lose your independence. Because there are strict rules. You are going to be praying at 1:30 in the morning. You're going to be assigned. This is your duty today. You're going to be planting, harvesting, whatever it is. You're going to be silent for these hours. And so, you know, it's a place where you get away from the chaos of life, but it's a place where you are really shaped and controlled. There is this one also, Rich.
Restricted social life.
Yeah. Your contact with your family was very, very limited. The friends that you had before you went into the monastery, you don't have much contact with them. You have to make new friends inside of the monastery, but seeing mom and dad, seeing your grandpa and grandma, things like that, that was very, very restricted. Your social life was really controlled. We have another one, Cole.
Lack of connection to the outside world.
Yeah, you were secluded. As I showed you those pictures, none of those monasteries are in the city, and you can just step outside and be right there. You were set apart. You didn't have access to news. I don't know today whether they have cell phones in monasteries. I don't know. I assume they do, but maybe they do not. But you were out of the world, we would say. You were removed, and that's why I read to you that passage from John 17. Another area is your lifestyle and your comforts. And Mariah, this one?
Minimalistic living.
Yes. What does that mean?
Very few possessions.
Exactly.
No big screen TV.
You don't have your closet full of clothing. You've got these robes that you have to wear. You have very few personal possessions. And that's what we call minimalist, just the basic necessity. Here is another characteristic. Kelly, I think it's your turn.
Lack of distractions.
Yes. Now, there are times we don't want any distractions, but do distractions have an advantage?
Yes.
You want to do the same thing over and over and over again. You know, I think all of us, we work, but then I need to go out and work in the garden. I need to do something else. In the monastery, there's very little distraction that you can change what you're thinking about. And so you didn't have that type of thing. This one, Kinden.
Hard physical labor.
What kind of labor do you think you'd be doing?
Gardening, probably copying a lot of the Bible, repairing, laying bricks.
You're doing what? All the farm work that you do today with machinery, they had a farm, they had a plant, they had a plow, they had a hoe, they had a water, they had to pull weeds. Everything had to be done by hand. There was a lot of hard physical labor there. And, you know, you said copying things and so on. They're also cooking. They have to provide food. And so they're doing all of these things. You had a lot of hard physical labor. Another one, Collins.
Limited sleep included.
Do you remember what would limit your sleeping time?
Praying.
Yes. What was that earliest prayer time?
1:30 in the morning.
1:30 in the morning. Then you had it at dawn again, you had to get up. And then you had sunrise, you had to get up, and so on. And so your schedule interrupted your sleep a lot. And then the food would be very, very simple. And so those are the disadvantages you would have there. Another disadvantage with community and personal growth, this one, Tim.
Interpersonal conflict.
Yeah. So you're living with these other monks. They are spiritual people, but they're humans. And you know that we as humans, we can get into conflict with one another. But when you are so restricted and you're so controlled, just imagine that there's a person in there that they're not your enemy, but you don't connect. Just like having a roommate that you don't really connect with. Imagine living in this situation. This one, Josie.
Stagnation.
What would be stagnant in a monastery? That you sort of just hit a plateau. You don't get better, you don't get worse, it just stays the same. What do you think that might be? Anybody?
Maybe your prayer life?
You are correct. Because, you reach this level, your whole spiritual, devotional life, it can become stagnant, it becomes boring, it becomes, it's not stimulating because you're not out in the world, you're not interacting, you're not seeing the needs that you need to work with. And then we have one more here. That will be this one, and that's Corey's. That's right. If you would join the monastery at your age, Corey, can you see the rest of your life living in the monastery? You have to have a lifelong commitment that this is it. And so some people went to the monastery. You could get out of the monastery, renounce your vows, and leave. But those were the challenges of monasticism. Then you have some practical and external issues. The first one of these, David.
Financial difficulties?
Why would you have financial difficulties?
You can't buy anything if you haven't sold to get money.
And you didn't have any money. And so you need health care, you need to buy medication, and so on and so forth. You're going to have to go out and beg for money so that you can carry on the necessities. Thank you very much. Then we have another one coming up here. Becky?
Lack of support for health needs.
Yeah, that's related to what I just said. Most of monasteries are very remote. They're very small. So if you got sick, you needed health care, there was no support for that other than maybe somebody putting a cold cloth on your head. And here is another one that you would have when it comes to practical external issues. David?
How much scrutiny?
Yes. When you were out on the street, if you were some of these types of monks that you ministered to the poor and so on and so forth, then people are going to come up to you. They can ask you religious questions. You were expected to be able to answer them. And you're also being watched like a hawk, and that can be a disadvantage. And there's one more here, Ryan.
Living a past life.
Yes, that doesn't mean that past life was an immoral life. It just means you lived with your parents, you had a vocation, you were giving up a life that you knew to give this kind of life, and that could lead to tremendous feeling of loss, a tremendous feeling of regret. And so, tell me, what do you think of monasticism? Your turn to talk.
It lays out the whole structure of the family too.
Say that one more time,
It
David.
lays out the whole structure of the family.
Yes.
Tells us to be fruitful and multiply, that there's no place for that.
So you're going to vote against monasticism. There is, I like your answer. Very good one.
It's got pros and cons.
What are the pros?
The opportunity to really just, focus on God, time with prayer, and, sometimes with busy lives, that's the part that I hate, that it feels like it's not getting the attention. So then I'm like, wow, I really have time for that. But then the cons would be, I wouldn't want to leave my little bubble. So.
Anybody ready to go to the monastery? You know where the closest one is? You have to drive about 3 hours. You got to go to Dubuque. There's a monastery there. I'll show you a picture of it right away. I like what you're saying.
So are monks allowed to go out and about? I mean, you said in Korea where we were, they were out walking down the street. Like here, if you go to Dubuque, or they stay in their building, or
Rich, I cannot answer that question.
they go down the street and do this and that.
I cannot answer that question. We'll have to go to Dubuque and check it out. But let's read this. John, would you read this?
Asceticism and monasticism are two religious disciplines designed to de-emphasize the pleasures of the world so the practitioner can concentrate on the spiritual life.
And that's what we like about it. I can concentrate on it. And so, Patty, this second paragraph.
Both asceticism and monasticism have been adopted by worshippers of various faiths.
Yes, and for the reasons that of the advantages that we have spoken about earlier this evening. And Rich, would you read this paragraph?
In general, asceticism is the practice of strict self-denial as a means of attaining a higher spiritual plane.
And we have some appreciation for it. And we go to Cole.
Monasticism is the state of being secluded from the world in order to fulfill religious vows.
That is correct. And so, what is the church's response? And we have this one, Mariah.
The church was never intended to be isolated from people in need of Christ. 1 Corinthians 5, verse 9 and 10.
And here is that Bible verse read by Kelly.
I wrote to you in my letter not to associate with sexually immoral people, not at all meaning the sexually immoral of this world, or greedy and swindlers or idolaters, since then you would need to go out to the world.
And so the church, as we have read from John 17, is that we believe the church must be in the world, not isolated from it. We have this one, Kinder.
Monasticism is not biblical. It is that it ignores our responsibility to go into all the world and preach the gospel. Matthew 28:19.
And here is that passage. Collins, could you read the passage?
Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
I thank you. How well you read. And then there is one more here. Tim, would you read this one?
While we are not of the world, we are to be in it. John 17.
And thank you. And this verse will sound familiar. Dan?
I do not ask that you take them out of the world, but that you keep them from the evil one.
Thank you. The Reformed theology on monasticism, we don't say it's good. We're not saying it's bad. We don't condemn asceticism, that you want to live a simpler lifestyle. We are asking the question, why are you denying yourself? Why are you living a life of self-denial? Is it to honor God? There are times you and I have to deny ourselves to combat sin. There are times when we need to just live a simpler lifestyle. But the danger of these kinds of lives is that you maybe have the desire to earn God's favor. If I just live a simpler lifestyle, God will love me more. He will see that. It can also be boastful. You can be proud about it. That look how simple we live. We're more godly than you do. And so those are the dangers of it. But I wanted you to have quite an understanding of monasticism. It's been in the history of the church. It continues. And here is that monastery over by Dubuque. It was founded in 1849. And you can go there for a day. You can go there for a week. Yes.
I've got a question, because there seems to be some trend here recently, even in the CRC, around taking sabbaticals. So how would we view sabbaticals, right? Is that kind of a temporary monasticism for a time? Is it something different?
Why do you ask me? Somebody want to respond to John?
So I can see the benefit. I mean, we talk about the benefits and things like that, right? And a focus for a time. And it seems that there's a lot of similarities, but not necessarily the
I'm going
same.
to give you my answer.
Okay.
I believe God has built in His moral law a Sabbath. Every 7 days we are to rest. And I think the abuse of the Sabbath is a big problem. Sabbaticals. Didn't Israel have a sabbatical every 7 years? No rain, no harvesting, no planting. And so I don't think the idea of a sabbatical is unbiblical. I think our Western culture is we are under so much pressure, under so many things. And, we're embarrassed, if somebody would say, well, what did you do this afternoon? Well, I really just sat out on the porch and watched a robin building its nest. You would be so embarrassed. Because we measure our worth by the work that we get done. And I think sabbaticals are good. I think that helps people from getting, worn out, burned out. But which mother gets a sabbatical? You boys, you help mom, right? Give her a day off. Her birthday, she doesn't have to cook. Is that how it goes? I just think that it's really important that we reflect on our life. Do I take a break? Do I rest? And that's my answer to that question. Did I answer it correctly? I mean, you want to challenge me?
No, I think,
Yeah.
I think there's a good sense of what God has already put in place for rest, but sometimes there's other times when we need to be more deliberate about that. So I think there's differences. I mean, from your answer, it seems like there are differences between.
I think our lives are much more hurried than they were 2 generations ago. I think electricity has really made a big change because we never have to stop working. We just go and go and go. I'm not going to condemn a person who works, but I just think all of us need to reflect in my life. Why am I working? What's the drive? Beginning next week, we will have our next lesson, which will be on, this is the end of it. It's going to be on the Great Schism is what it's going to be, and all the papers you have copied for us already. Let us pray together. Our Father, we thank you that we can study together, we can reflect on our life together. We pray that our lives are lived, that you are still the focus, you're the center of our life, that in our busyness we can rest, we can devote time to being refreshed together and with you alone. May we live under your grace and your mercy and your love in this week. As you bless us, may we be a blessing to each other. In Jesus' name, amen.